Welcome to Mr. Beats-Idiots at Work. This is where you will see your moment compilations. Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's show where we're going to talk about something that we all love. Yes, you hear me right. I'm sure you were all hoping for a cozy chat about sunny days and clear skies. But no, today we're diving head first into the wet and wild world of floods. Grab your floaties and prepare to be thoroughly drenched in knowledge. Floods are nature's way of saying, hey, you think you're in control? Watch this. They come in all shapes and sizes, from the seemingly innocent afternoon downpour that turns into a full-blown river in your front yard, to the catastrophic flash floods that arrive faster than you can say, where did my car go? Now let's get something straight. Floods don't care about your plans, your fancy shoes, or your perfectly manicured garden. When it rains, and when it rains too much, things get wet. And I mean wet in ways you didn't think were possible. Sounds simple enough, right? But there are many ways in which floods can happen. That take days to develop. Floods are like the mood wings of Mother Nature. Unpredictable and intense. A flood can occur because of heavy rain, the melting of snow or ice, or even the failure of a dam, which is basically when a dam decides, I've had enough, I'm out of here. When these events overwhelm the natural water systems or man-made infrastructure, the result is, well, water where it shouldn't be. The United Nations Office for Disaster Risk Reduction reports that floods are the most common type of natural disaster, affecting nearly 2 billion people every year. So yes, flood season is every season. It's like that one movie that's always playing on repeat at the theater of life. But unfortunately, the tickets aren't optional. Types of floods, a smorgasbord of wetness. Let's break down the different types of floods, because just saying flood isn't enough. Oh no, Mother Nature has given us many ways to get wet and miserable. River floods. This one's a classic. Rivers, particularly those with large drainage areas, can easily overflow when there's excessive rainfall. Think of it as the river getting a little too enthusiastic about its job of carrying water. In 2023, the Yangtze River in China swelled so much that more than 200,000 people were evacuated due to the flooding. We're talking massive floods that drown entire agricultural areas, causing crop loss, livestock deaths, and millions of dollars in damages. It's not just inconvenient, it's disastrous. But hey, it does make for a very wet river cruise, I suppose. Coastal floods. This is your typical high tide, high drama flood. Coastal flooding occurs when sea levels rise, either due to storms or, as we've seen with rising global temperatures, a slow creep of sea level rise. It's like the ocean getting a little too cozy with the shore and saying, I think I'll just stay here for a while. Coastal flooding is especially problematic in areas like Miami and New York City, where entire neighborhoods are built close to the water. You know, real estate that's just begging for a tsunami to show up uninvited. In 2023, Miami saw multiple instances of sunny day flooding, where tidal flooding occurred even on clear, calm days. Just a little preview of the apocalypse. Flash floods. Here's the most unpredictable kind. Flash floods are like a surprise party, except instead of confetti, you get water, a lot of water. These floods happen suddenly, within 6 hours of heavy rainfall, and they can be triggered by anything from a burst of rain to a dam failure. Flash floods are dangerous because they happen fast and fiercely. In 2023, flash floods in Germany and Austria wreaked havoc, with some areas receiving an entire month's worth of rain in just a few hours. It's like nature decided it was time to throw the entire water cooler onto the dance floor, and it didn't care if you were ready or not. Urban floods. You thought you were safe because you live in the city, didn't you? Well, guess what? The concrete jungle isn't always so safe when it comes to water. Urban floods happen when cities with poor drainage systems can't handle the heavy rainfall. Picture this. You're walking down the street, the skies open up, and suddenly, you're wading through ankle-deep water while everyone else is frantically looking for higher ground. This happens frequently in cities like Jakarta, Bangkok, and Mumbai, where urban sprawl, poor infrastructure, and climate change all conspire to flood the streets. In 2023, New York City experienced flash floods so severe that subway stations became mini lakes. It's like an extreme sport, navigating public transit during a deluge. Lake floods. Lake floods happen when a large body of water, such as the lake or reservoir, overflows its banks. This can happen because of excessive rainfall or the melting of snow and ice. The 2023 floods in Canada's Fraser River Valley caused massive inundation, with millions in damages. These floods tend to be a bit slower moving, but just as dangerous. The real problem with lake floods is that they can last for days, and people don't always take them as seriously at first. It's like that friend who keeps saying there'll be 5 more minutes for hours on end. Except, in this case, it's the water that won't leave. The science of floods, why do they happen? Now that we've covered the types of floods, let's talk about the science behind them. Flooding is the result of an imbalance between the amount of water a system can hold and the amount of water it gets. When a river, lake, or ocean gets too much water from rain or melting snow, it overflows. Simple, right? Well, not so fast. There are a number of factors that can increase the likelihood and severity of a flood. One of the most important is climate change. As the atmosphere warms, it can hold more moisture, leading to more intense storms and heavier rainfall. In fact, the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, IPCC, predicts that global rainfall will increase by up to 20% by 2050, which means that floods will likely become more common and more severe. It's like the sky deciding to dump an extra bucket of water on us because it's feeling generous. Urbanization is another big factor. Cities are covered in concrete, which doesn't absorb water like the soil does. So when it rains, the water has nowhere to go except into the streets, which causes flooding. Urban sprawl combined with inadequate drainage systems is a recipe for disaster. You might think you're safe because your area hasn't flooded in decades, but it's only a matter of time before Mother Nature reminds you that she's always got a backup plan. The impact of flooding more than just wet feet. Now, floods don't just make for soggy shoes and ruined carpets. They can have catastrophic consequences. Flooding leads to displacement. People are forced to leave their homes, often with very little notice. This can result in millions of people becoming refugees in their own countries. In 2023, flooding in Pakistan displaced over 30 million people, making it one of the largest displacement crises in recent history. It's hard to imagine what it would be like to pack up your entire life in a day and flee to higher ground. But that's the reality for millions of people every year. 1. Pakistan's 2022 to 2023 megafloods. The land became an ocean. One of the most devastating flood events in recent history took place in Pakistan in 2022 to 2023. Triggered by unprecedented monsoon rainfall, nearly 190% more than the national 30-year average, the floods submerged 1/3 of the country. Yes, you heard that right. 1/3 of the nation was underwater. If Pakistan were a pizza, imagine someone pouring a gallon of water over the whole pie. Not appetizing, is it? The floods affected 33 million people, displacing 8 million and causing damages exceeding $40 billion. According to the World Bank, crops covering 5 million acres were destroyed, exacerbating food insecurity in a country already grappling with economic challenges. Tragically, over 1,700 lives were lost, and many of the victims were children. The floods also unleashed a secondary disaster. Waterborne diseases like cholera and dengue fever spread rapidly among the displaced. Interestingly, the Indus River, Pakistan's lifeblood for agriculture, was both a blessing and a curse. While it sustains millions, the river swelled to catastrophic levels, drowning homes, roads, and even power plants. The irony? The country faced a drinking water shortage while being surrounded by, too much water. Nature has a twisted sense of humor. 2. Hurricane Harvey, 2017 Houston, we have a problem. In August 2017, Hurricane Harvey decided to teach Texas a lesson about water. Over 4 days, Harvey dumped 33 trillion gallons of water on the southeastern United States. To put that into perspective, that's enough water to fill over 50,000 Houston Astrodomes. Imagine trying to fit that much water in your backyard pool. Houston, a city notoriously prone to flooding due to its flat terrain and urban sprawl, bore the brunt of the storm. The storm caused $125 billion in damages, making it the second costliest hurricane in U.S. history after Hurricane Katrina. Over 300,000 structures and nearly 500,000 vehicles were damaged or destroyed. Many residents didn't have flood insurance because they lived outside designated flood zones that Harvey completely ignored, proving yet again that floods don't respect human boundaries. The rainfall totals were record-breaking, with some areas receiving over 60 inches, 5 meters of rain. That's about as tall as an average 12-year-old, except instead of standing on land, that kid is now made entirely of rainwater. 3. Europe's 2021 floods. A wake-up call for the developed world. Floods aren't just a problem for developing nations. In 2021, parts of Western Europe, including Germany, Belgium, and the Netherlands, experienced their own watery nightmare. Over 7 inches, 180 millimeters, of rain fell in just 24 hours in some areas, turning rivers into raging torrents. The Ahr River in Germany rose from its usual 1-meter depth to over 9 meters in less than a day, sweeping away homes, bridges, and cars. The floods caused $46 billion in damages and claimed the lives of 229 people, making it Europe's deadliest flood in decades. Scientists quickly linked the event to climate change, noting that the likelihood of such heavy rainfall had increased by at least 20% due to global warming. What's shocking is that many of the areas affected were considered safe due to modern infrastructure and early warning systems. Yet, the systems failed to predict the scale of the disaster, underscoring the need for even better planning and adaptation strategies. Global impact. According to the UN, floods affected an average of 158 million people annually between 2010 and 2020. That's roughly 1 in every 50 people on Earth dealing with floods every single year. Economic cost. The global economic cost of floods is staggering, exceeding $60 billion annually. In 2023, this number spiked to $80 billion, driven by events in Pakistan, the U.S., and Europe. Deaths. Floods account for about 40% of all natural disaster-related deaths worldwide, making them one of the deadliest hazards. Climate change factor. Studies show that for every 1 degree Celsius increase in global temperature, the atmosphere holds 7% more moisture, leading to heavier rainfall and more frequent floods. By 2100, the IPCC warns that annual flood damages could triple if greenhouse gas emissions continue unchecked. Urban growth. Over 55% of the global population now lives in cities, many of which are built near rivers or coastlines. Urban areas with poor drainage systems are particularly vulnerable, turning heavy rains into full-blown disasters. Despite the terrifying stats, humans are fighting back against floods with technology and ingenuity. Let's look at some solutions that are making waves, pun intended. Flood barriers. Cities like Venice, Italy, have invested in massive flood defenses like the Mose Project. This system of barriers can temporarily block high tides from inundating the city. In 2023, Mose successfully prevented catastrophic flooding during a particularly nasty storm surge. Early warning systems. Countries like Bangladesh, which faces regular monsoon flooding, have developed world-class early warning systems. These systems have drastically reduced flood-related fatalities from tens of thousands per year in the 1970s to just hundreds today. Green infrastructure. Cities are embracing solutions like rain gardens, permeable pavements, and restored wetlands to absorb and manage excess water. The Netherlands, a country that's basically a flood waiting to happen, has perfected this art with projects like the Room for the River initiative, which creates overflow areas for rivers to flood safely. Community preparedness. Educating communities on flood risks and evacuation plans is critical. Simple actions like building homes on stilts, installing some pumps, and keeping emergency kits can save lives. Alright, let's not end on a totally serious note. Here are some lighter observations about floods. Fashion statements. Floods are the only time when pairing rubber boots with pajamas is socially acceptable. Function over fashion, right? New swimming holes. Neighborhood floods turn streets into rivers, and you always see that one person kayaking down Main Street. You know who you are. Nature's cleaning crew. On the bright side, floods do a great job of moving junk out of your backyard. The downside, it usually ends up in your neighbor's yard. Global flooding in 2024, a rising tide of disaster. According to the United Nations Office for Disaster Risk Reduction, UNDRR, global flooding incidents in 2024 have already surpassed 1,200 in number. While not all of these floods are large-scale, the overall damage has been catastrophic. The total economic cost of flooding globally in 2024 is projected to exceed $85 billion, marking an increase of more than 7% compared to 2023. This includes damage to infrastructure, property, agriculture, and the loss of livelihoods. Flood-affected regions in 2024 include South Asia, parts of Southeast Asia, the United States, Europe, and parts of Sub-Saharan Africa. Southeast Asia has been particularly hard hit, with floods in Indonesia, India, and Bangladesh resulting in over 500 deaths by the first quarter of the year alone. To Southeast Asia, the monsoon strikes again. In Bangladesh, the monsoon rains began earlier than usual in 2024, overwhelming the Padma, Jamuna, and Ganges rivers and submerging thousands of homes. Heavy rainfall from April to June caused the Padma River to exceed its safe limit by more than 5 meters, resulting in widespread flooding in regions like Khulna, Barisal, and Chittagong. In total, more than 10 million people have been affected by the floods in Bangladesh this year. India has also experienced significant flooding in 2024, particularly in Uttarakhand and Kerala, where flash floods triggered by intense rainfall claimed more than 300 lives in the first half of the year. The Ganges River Basin continues to experience higher than average rainfall, with some areas of northern India receiving up to 400% above average precipitation in June. The floodwaters have caused major disruptions in agriculture, leading to a 20% decrease in rice production in key areas of Uttar Pradesh and Bihar, further exacerbating the food security crisis in the region. Indonesia has been battling massive floods due to both heavy rains and rising sea levels. In 2024, Jakarta saw severe flooding that affected more than 1 million people, caused $5 billion in damages, and led to the evacuation of 200,000 residents. This event marks a significant increase in flood severity, attributed to both local weather patterns and global sea level rise. 3. Europe. A wet and wild 2024. In 2024, Europe has also faced its share of major flood events. After the catastrophic floods of 2021, countries like Germany and Belgium are still recovering, but 2024 has been no less challenging. In July 2024, a sudden downpour caused floods in northern France and parts of Belgium, leading to the deaths of at least 150 people and displacing thousands. The Seine River in Paris rose by more than 6 meters in under 48 hours, flooding low-lying areas and making major roads impassable. France has been grappling with its own flood risks since then, and despite improvements to flood defenses, flash flooding has become more frequent. In 2024, some parts of southern France received half their annual rainfall in just a few days, overwhelming drainage systems and causing extensive damage to towns like Montpellier and Avignon. The European Environmental Agency, EEA, has forecasted that flash floods in the Mediterranean region will increase by 25 to 30% by the year 2030 due to rising temperatures and changing weather patterns. The UK, while not as prone to floods as some countries, has also been affected by increasingly frequent and intense rainfall events in 2024. In February, London saw some of its worst flooding in decades. The River Thames swelled, causing damage to historic sites, and thousands of homes were flooded, costing the city more than $500 million in damages. The UK's flood risk has risen by more than 20% since 2010, according to the Met Office, and 2024 is no exception. 4. United States. A flood of problems in 2024. Flooding in the United States has been a significant issue in 2024, with major flooding events affecting the Midwest, California, and the Gulf Coast. In March 2024, historic flooding hit Missouri and Illinois after days of torrential rainfall. The Mississippi River surpassed flood stage by 7 meters, inundating St. Louis and surrounding areas. This caused damage to more than 30,000 homes and led to the displacement of 80,000 people. Emergency officials reported that more than 50 rivers had breached their banks during this period. In California, the winter months of 2024 saw a string of atmospheric rivers, which are narrow but intense plumes of moisture from the Pacific Ocean. These caused extreme flooding in central California, especially in Monterey and Santa Barbara counties. The flooding was so severe that it resulted in over $2 billion in damages, destroyed thousands of homes, and left thousands without power for weeks. The Gulf Coast, particularly in Louisiana and Texas, has seen persistent flooding due to seasonal hurricanes and tropical storms. As of May 2024, the Louisiana area had already experienced its third significant flooding event of the year, which left 10,000 residents displaced and caused $500 million in damage to infrastructure, agriculture, and homes. Florida, on the Atlantic coast, has had its own share of flooding due to rising sea levels, exacerbated by the unusually high king tides of 2024. As sea levels rise by about 3.4 millimeters per year, coastal flooding events are becoming more frequent and damaging. Miami in particular has seen its sunny day flooding events increase by 45% over the last 5 years. So, in 2024, what used to be a minor nuisance has turned into a monthly problem for many neighborhoods. 5. Sub-Saharan Africa, a growing crisis. Sub-Saharan Africa, traditionally less impacted by large-scale flooding events, has seen an alarming rise in flooding incidents since 2020, with 2024 being no exception. In Nigeria, heavy rains and overflowing rivers have led to widespread floods in both urban and rural areas. Lagos, the country's most populous city, has suffered from recurrent flooding, with the 2014 flood recurrence rate in the city increasing by 20% due to changing weather patterns. In Sudan, 2024 has been another year of flooding, with over 100,000 people displaced in the first 2 months of the rainy season. The Blue Nile River overflowed in Khartoum, and experts are attributing the intensified flooding to a combination of poor urban planning, river management issues, and changing rainfall patterns linked to global climate change. The future of flooding, the numbers don't lie. Looking ahead, the frequency and intensity of floods will likely continue to increase, driven by climate change, urbanization, and deforestation. According to the IPCC's latest projections, by 2050, flood damage could rise by up to 50% in many regions.
Put your hands up in the air.
Unless urgent action is taken. Here are some key figures and predictions. Global average precipitation is expected to increase by 5 to 15% by 2050, especially in tropical regions. River floods could affect 5 billion people by 2100 compared to 1.5 billion today. Sea level rise is predicted to increase by 0.3 meters by 2100, potentially causing a doubling of coastal flood risks in major cities like New York, Miami, and Shanghai. Flood fatalities could triple by 2100 if global warming continues unabated. The global death toll from flooding could reach 50,000 to 100,000 annually, compared to 20,000 in 2024. Conclusion: water, water everywhere, and not a drop to spare. As we can see, floods in 2024 are a growing crisis, affecting millions of people and causing billions of dollars in damage. The flood events we've discussed here paint a clear picture of the growing challenges we face due to climate change and urban expansion. The numbers are sobering, but they also underscore the urgent need for better preparedness, improved flood management systems, and serious climate action. To mitigate the impact of floods, we need a multi-pronged approach, including better flood defenses, more resilient infrastructure, and stronger early warning systems. But at the heart of it, we need to face the reality that floods are becoming a regular part of life, and it's our job to adapt and prepare for what's coming next. So, let's stay vigilant, informed, and ready to ride the wave. Figuratively, of course. So, as we look back at the floods of 2024, it's clear that Mother Nature is still trying to teach us all how to swim, and not in the way we'd like. From the deadly deluges in Bangladesh and the U.S., to the sea level rise creeping up on cities like Miami and Lagos, floods are showing no signs of slowing down. It's not just the rain. It's the entire system we're up against. Rising temperatures, shifting rainfall patterns, and cities that weren't exactly built with floods in mind. But hey, we're humans, we love a challenge, right? And while it's easy to feel overwhelmed by the scale of the problem, there's hope. The answer isn't to build a bigger boat, though maybe don't rule it out entirely. It's in how we adapt, prepare, and plan for the future. Whether it's through better infrastructure, smarter urban planning, or just a little more rainwater awareness, we've got tools to handle it if we start using them wisely. So, next time the sky opens up and the waters start rising, remember this. We're all in this together, and it's not the floods that define us, but how we respond to them. So, keep your feet dry, your mindset strong, and if all else fails, invest in some really stylish, waterproof boots. Because the waters might rise, but so can we. Stay safe, stay prepared, and let's keep riding the waves of change.